Hey, Mystic Michaela, spiritual family. Welcome to Know Your Aura with Mystic Michaela. Today, we are diving in deep to the shadow self and shadow work. So when you hear words like insecurity, vulnerability, shame, fear, guilt, what does that make you feel? Makes you feel a little icky, a little uneasy, right? Well, there you go. You just met your shadow self. It's not the easiest thing to talk about, but we're going to do my take on it today, hear some of your stories. But first, hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys. Yeah, and you've been talking about the shadow self this week, and I'm struggling to figure it all out. I'm trying to learn from you about it. My head's still stuck on last week's episode with the debit box. I'm still trying to unravel that mystery.
The ghosts.
Yeah, see if I could, kind of debunk it a little bit. But I really haven't been able to. So now we're doing this shadow thing, and I'm struggling to kind of figure out what it's all about. And hopefully by the end of the episode, you'll help me and probably a lot of the listeners figure what it's all about.
Yeah, the hardest part about the shadow self isn't really understanding it. It's more kind of like going into your own. Because there's so many fortresses that your ego likes you to keep the same. It doesn't want you to change or grow, and that's what you're going to do when you dive into your shadow self. It has so many walls and barriers to it in yourself. Because basically, and I'm going to talk about this in, my speech later on, basically, it's the parts of yourself you reject. That's what it is. So growing up, immediately maybe you were told, if you don't share, you're not a nice person. And now when somebody asks for something from you and you don't want to share, you immediately brush off any sort of feelings that you actually have about maybe not wanting to or whatever. It's hard for you to kind of connect or dive with parts of yourself that are ones that you felt you had to reject or not pay attention to, but they still exist, and they still rule you.
So let me just go back to that example you gave. So, so let's say I'm like 3 years old.
Yeah.
Or 4 years old, whatever. I'm in my play group. I have my favorite toy.
Yes.
And I don't really want to share that.
Yeah.
That the natural instinct is, I want that.
And that's normal.
Right. But then, let's say mom and dad come along or whatever, the teacher comes along, and then they take that toy and they say, oh, no, you got to share that with Maddie.
Right.
This really happened to me. No, I'm just kidding. So what you're saying is then that's kind of where this develops?
Exactly. And various degrees, obviously, and it's such an individualized process depending on how you were nurtured or parented or how society affected you or your own traumas and whatnot. That's why all of this is really best done in therapy and a lot of times, obviously with your own help. But yeah, in that moment, as kids are really good at bad versus good. And society, the ego 3D society is really good at making two categories, bad person, good person. And there's no such thing. When you're 4 and you don't want to share your toy, that just means you don't want to share your toy. That's not a good thought. That's not a bad thought. It's just a thought. And that thought will never go away. It's never going anywhere. It's just that now when you're 40, whatever, and somebody's like, hey, I want to share your money. Hey, can I borrow your money? And all of a sudden, you're like, no. And then there's a part of you that feels guilty or bad or whatever. And maybe then you do it anyway. So you avoid those feelings because back when you were 4, you were told, if you don't share, you're a bad person.
Oh, okay. Now, what if the opposite happens? So let's say, we go back to 4, my play group, I have my toy, Maddie wants my toy, and then nobody tells me I have to give it to him. And I never share as a kid. So I'm anytime someone wanted someone, no one ever forced it. So I just kept the toy, played with it. So I never learned another way. Does that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because in readings I will get 2 types of people sometimes. And usually these are the people we talk about. So I'll be doing a reading with a client and they'll show me their husband or something, for example. And either sometimes they were really never told no. And then they have a hard time hearing no. So that actually becomes the trigger. Okay. So that's the shadow self.
So either way, you're going to get something.
It's just human nature. You have parts of yourself you're going to push away. It's just how you were taught to access them or how you were taught to integrate them into your life. is the distinguishing factors. Because we all have those parts of ourselves that we don't like to admit to, that aren't great to talk about, that aren't the prettiest parts of who we are. But the integration and the reality check of them and the self-awareness is the whole purpose of shadow work.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
because if you're told yes to everything, then your shadow self, hearing the word no becomes the trigger.
Right. So what basically you're saying is so for every person, these triggers are going to be different. The shadow self's going to be different.
Everything is different.
Kind of like an aura. Everyone has like a different, like you say auras like snowflakes. Mm-hmm. Everyone has a different like shadow self is what you're saying?
Totally. It's very unique to you, and it's very guarded by you. So it's a very, and that's why I always tell, when we're sharing these things, you have to be in a safe place to share these things with other people, with people that you trust, with people who aren't going to manipulate it, with professionals, with like really close other people that get it. Because you can, and I talk about this later, you'll get, and a lot of my listeners, and this is how it works for us, will get taken advantage of for our shadow selves too. So people will find us because we feel guilty if we say no to something. Therefore, we don't have boundaries. Therefore, people that don't like boundaries will harness that tear and rip we have in our shadow selves and use it for their own benefits.
Okay. So this is not really a negative thing. Because
No.
like when you say shadow self, the first thing in my mind, I go to like negative.
Yeah.
This is bad. I don't want to have this.
Yeah.
I don't want this shadow thing following me around or in
Right.
my brain or whatever.
It sounds all witchy.
But it's real, witchy.
It does sound woo-woo.
Yeah, we already did the Halloween episode last week, so
It just means the parts of yourself you reject. That's all. And it just means the things that make you go, I don't like that when you hear it. And the whole point of it is to go inward in yourself, because everything that, we all live in our own realities. We all live in our own bubble. And anything that happens to us environmentally happens to all of us basically kind of the same. It's just some of us have triggers and some of us don't. So the way to understand your shadow self is to be like, ooh, why did that bother me? Well, why did that and really go into your own psyche and ask yourself a lot of questions. They call it the Socratic method, like from Socrates.
Like questioning.
Just keep asking questions to yourself. And when you hit a wall, that's good. That means you got to sit there for a minute. You got to press there for a little bit. Can take a while. I will say, this is fun. When you have a spiritual awakening, it's just you meet your shadow self. It's just something that kind of happens. And there's so many ways you can name that. But that's what it is. And anything that I've been working on is when I get a download or I meet part of my shadow self, that's when I move ahead in life. So like lately, just this past few weeks, the part I met in myself was, oh my God, I'm only motivated from fear. That's like and that sounds simple, but it was something that I kind of went into myself, and I was talking to you about it, Scott, because I was like, oh my God, wait a second. I only do anything when I'm scared. I'm going to lose something or whatever. And that's
and I think most people do that.
Yeah, I want to do a whole episode on that. But and most people do that because it's a condition in just the hardwiring of our brains. But I was like, oh, wait a second. What if I got motivated just by good stuff? So I've been working on that. But that little shadow self thing, because that wasn't a great thing for me to know about myself. I was like, oh my God, that's awful that I do that. And then I was like, oh, wait a second. Let me use that. Let me try to work with it. And that's the whole point.
All right. Well, I think the best way to go about this is we take a little break.
Yeah.
I got some dad grass I'm going to use in a second.
Okay.
And then when we come back, we're going to actually delve into this brain, my brain.
Your brain.
Which is, there's a lot of cobwebs and everything going on in there, shadows and everything's in there.
We're going to get real authentic.
We'll get real authentic. I'm willing to do this.
With something that's going on in our lives right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to see if we can find your shadow self in there.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about this.
Okay.
I don't know what we're going to find.
Me neither.
It could be really scary.
I don't know.
Let's get out the dad grass.
Okay, let's do it. Hey, Scott.
Hey, guys.
Who doesn't love a trip down memory lane?
I love memory lane, especially with my dad grass.
Dad grass takes you back to a time when music was on vinyl, hangouts meant actually hanging out, and we didn't send you to the freaking moon.
I used to go to Fish concerts. My cousin is in the band. Good time remembering with my dad grass.
It's time to revive the pleasure of the casual smoke.
Whatever you do, Take care of your shoes.
Dadgrass is legal, organic, smokable hemp that relaxes your body and mellows your mind. Their 100% organic pre-rolled joints are very low in THC and high in CBD, so you can enjoy the effects of CBD while keeping a clear head. Chill out without getting stoned. It's like having a glass of wine, not the whole bottle. All Dadgrass products are federally legal for ages 21 and over and ships right to your door anywhere in the U.S. Whether you're looking for a new buzz or a chill way to enjoy an old favorite, Dadgrass will leave you in a euphoric mood. So right now, Dadgrass is offering our listeners 20% off your first order when you go to dadgrass.com/KYA. Go to dadgrass.com/KYA for 20% off your first order. That's dadgrass.com/KYA. And yes, Scott's cousin is in the band Fish. True story, everybody. I visited my parents over the summer, and they had no towels.
Yeah, okay. Wait, I'm going to go off on a tangent here.
Okay, do it.
Before we even get into the ad.
Do it.
Yes, this is true. I took a shower. I was listening to KYA up there. I got out of the shower, went to dry off and everything, and literally all there was like a little face towel.
He's not joking.
I'm not joking.
It's
I
a
had
washcloth.
to clean, dry off with only that.
Visualize it, people.
Visualize. I had to run very quickly across the hallway to the next room without anyone seeing me with my little towel cloth.
Just visualize all of that.
Just visualize that. Okay.
So, listen. What's the best gift for them? It's towels. That's what they're getting this Christmas. And it's the gift of comfort, and they're beautiful. And listen, whether that gift is hug and blanket form, or the weighted blanket, by the way, by Brooklyn, it is insane, or a whole spa day wrapped around your body. Ooh, those robes. Brooklinen has got options for everyone on your list. And if you're looking for more ways to stay cozy, check out Brooklinen's candles, eye masks, and accessories. There are gifts for everyone at every budget. My parents are getting towels. You can go big with the super plush towels and the luxe bedding bundle for a family, or a puzzle for your best friend's neighbor when they host that holiday party that you're forced to go to. There's nothing worse than that, but there's literally something for everyone. Brooklinen's goal is to create beautiful, high-quality home essentials that don't cost an arm and a leg. It's the perfect place to find the best gift. And their customer service, clearly, they get their 8 hours every night because they're a dream to work with if you ever have an issue. So, check out the gift guide to find the perfect present at every price point. Go to brooklinen.com and use promo code KYA to get $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. Code KYA. You get $20 off with a minimum purchase of $100. Hey, Scotty.
Hey, guys.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a story that's going on right now, and it's actually been very triggering for you, Scotty, this week.
Yeah. So, I work with a lot of vendors, and I'm not going to use any names or anyone here, just on that. And with one of the vendors.
A vendor in what capacity? Because people are going to be like, what?
In a work capacity.
Okay.
I don't really want to
We don't want to go
into
like...
too involved.
Yeah,
with
all
this.
right, go ahead.
Anyway, and that part really doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter, okay.
Okay. So one of the vendors had an employee.
Right.
And this employee was basically fudging their time card.
They're fudging the time card. So they said they were in and they weren't.
Right. They were basically saying they were working a shift and that they were not putting in the time. They were just filling in the clock. And the shift happened to be very late at night. It was like 2 to 3 in the morning, like 2 to 4 in the morning.
That was the hours, 2 to 4 in the morning.
Yeah, it was kind of even like make your own hours. So it could be like 2 to 4. You could do it 3 to 5.
So it was like 2 hours in the middle of the night at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
3 days a week.
Okay.
Okay. And, at first they were doing it. It was fine. And then eventually, we kind of caught on that they just weren't doing those hours and they were just clocking in.
Because of like the honor code. And then they're like, hey, wait a second, nobody's paying attention. And so they just stopped going, but saying they were.
Right.
Okay.
And at this time, I don't know this person. Okay.
Right.
They're just I have like a lot of these vendors. There's a lot of people. Don't even know who the person is.
Right.
But I was presented with having to make a decision if I wanted this person fired, to lose their position.
Right. So on paper, that's kind of like, oh, fire them.
Yeah, my first thought, of course, is I'm red. Oh man, they're stealing. They're stealing.
That's
this
stealing
is theft.
money. Yeah.
I'm not even going to think about this. But then, my blue kicks in here, and I'm like, well, I got to see what's going on here.
Okay.
I can't just make that decision
Right.
within a few seconds. This is a person, this is a human being.
Right.
So I said, all right, I'm going to go talk to this person. So made a point, met this person for a coffee, and I talked to them.
Okay.
So, I found out about their life. The person was a single mom. Well, she is still alive.
She's a single mom. How old her kid?
She has a 8-year-old kid.
Okay.
A girl. The girl's had some health issues.
Okay.
In the time period that she was fudging the numbers.
Right.
There was a huge health crisis going on for this girl.
Okay.
Very scary. Very scary. No one would want to go through that. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to her speak, and she seems like a very nice person.
Right.
She's down to earth. I'm trying to put myself. I'm trying to.
She owned it.
Oh yeah, she owned it. She apologized 100 times.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for my behavior. This is not me. I never do this.
Right.
I just have this problem.
Well, now,
I had this problem with my child those weeks. And again, the time is 2 to 4 in the morning. So basically, think about this. She has to work a day shift.
Yeah.
This is when I start getting like all blue and angry. And this is where I'm getting triggered. So, she's working a day shift. She's working all day.
Yeah.
Has to go home. Remember, single mom. And then got to come out, let's say at 2 o'clock in the, it's a 20-minute ride. You got to come out 2 o'clock in the morning to 4 in the morning. Then you got a 20-minute ride back. And then she's got to be back at the shift.
Yeah.
Again, at like 7 a.m. or whatever.
So she has to leave her kid alone.
Yeah, or what are you going to do with the kid? The kid's only 8.
Right.
I wouldn't leave. I mean, I'd be terrified to leave, Bree or Abby alone. I'd be like, this can't happen. I'll do whatever it takes. You know what I'm saying? So, but she said like sometimes her parents will help out or she'll get someone to help out.
Right.
Sometimes she's got to wake the kid up.
Ugh.
I mean, I'm like,
is there anybody else that can do those hours?
Right. So then, so I'm going Blue City here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost like bawling. And then then of course I want to think of solutions.
Yeah.
So actually I started, and again, I'm probably wrong here. I don't know. And again, it's probably my shadow self coming out here. I'm actually saying, and look, I know she did wrong. Theft is no good at any point. I don't condone that in any way.
Right.
But I'm actually saying to myself, wait a second. Why did the employer, or why did we ever put this person in this position?
Right.
That they have to do this. Now I know that people have to do hard things, and people have hard jobs and things. And, I was fortunate enough that I never had to do that. I know you had a little bit of a different background than I did.
Yeah.
And, so to even say I can put myself in those shoes.
You can't.
I can't.
No.
I can't. Maybe I can't even get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, let alone imagine doing a 2 to 4 shift with my kid at home. So this triggered me, I guess. I was
and what's
so
interesting
upset.
was, and I think this is, and now is she getting fired or not?
I don't know.
It's not entirely up to you.
At the end of the day, I'm just talking for myself here.
Yeah.
I do not want her to get fired.
Okay.
I would rather I would love for this person to get a second chance.
Yeah.
I cannot say, but it's not totally up to me.
Now, and this is like why I think this is a good context to discuss the shadow self. Because when something like this happens,
right,
our tendency is to talk about, like, you go into it already. You're like the injustice of the workforce and how did this person get to this life situation where they got to work at shifts in the middle of the night, which a lot of people do, by the way.
Yes.
I grew up in a family where that was normal to me, and being left alone was not a big deal. And to me, that's not a triggering thing. Like, that's just from my life. It isn't.
Okay.
But for you, it is.
Yeah, so go into my head here. What is going on?
Yeah, so I try to tell you, like, right now, like, why take out the outside part? Why do you get so emotional when you talk about this?
I mean, I guess.
Like, what's inside of you?
I mean, I'm going to have to just kind of do this on the fly here.
Yeah, like, what's inside of you?
I guess I don't, it's hard for me to picture things.
Yeah.
But the first thing I go is to that kid. And,
But how does that kid relate to you?
I don't know.
Because the shadow self, and that's, we can talk about, there's 2 ways you can talk about this.
Okay.
You can talk about it from how an outside situation, what's going on, and the right and wrong, and the injustice, and the things, and then why do you care? You know what I mean? And why do you care? What's the bridge connecting that situation to you? That is shadow self work.
All right.
Like that, walking that bridge over to yourself and like who's the inner child in you that's being triggered? What's the situation? Like,
all right, so you're gonna have to. I mean, I guess
do
we
you
have to use
feel
the
like
Socratic
you can't-
method here.
Yeah.
Get this out of me. I
Well,
don't know.
I mean,
I don't know the answer.
So that's what like you do in therapy. Usually in
Yeah.
therapy, they
Yeah.
kind of like walk you back into yourself. You know, sometimes in a reading, spirit will show me real quick your own pattern for you, and if it resonates, you know, obviously I don't get that information. Spirit gets that information. If
Yeah.
it resonates, it helps you, and it's kind of like a shortcut to it. But when you're working on it in yourself, like anything outside, like this whole situation has really triggered you this week, and it's like, but and it's and I hear it too, and it is upsetting. I feel bad for this woman and everything. I'm not as triggered as much as you are, but I can also look into my own childhood and stuff and be like, yeah, that's not like a foreign concept to me that parents have to work and you're left alone. That is not. Hold on,
for you, yeah,
yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying like we all live in our own individual realities. So things that trigger us are actually about something unhealed in us. So that's triggering you. There's something unhealed in you. And it's okay that something bothers you. Like, I don't think she should get fired either. Like, she just needs a second chance, the poor woman. Like, but I'm not upset about, like, you're very upset. Now, I get upset about other things that you don't get upset about.
So what could it be that's making me upset about this?
I know, that's shadow work.
Oh.
You're supposed to, like, journal and stuff, Scott.
So I have to, I mean... All right, so let me ask you this. Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously, this takes a lot of time to do. It cannot be done
No.
here in the next few minutes on the podcast. You have a shortcut sometimes with the spirit connection
I do.
and your readings.
Well, I have my own ideas about you. But
could you help me out with this one? Or,
okay.
All right,
So
help me out with
it's
this
just
one.
because I'm married to you. But like this happens in readings a lot where I'll just see somebody and be like,
Right.
listen, this is what I think about. This is what I get. This is what I'm seeing.
All right, give it to me straight.
So with you, I feel like you were unheard a lot as a child. That's how you felt.
Okay.
And I feel like you have a real issue with feeling isolated in your own thoughts and not being validated in your own thoughts growing up. I feel like you always had a Scotty thought and it was kind of shot down as, nope, that's not real or that's not how things work or whatever.
Okay.
And so I feel like when you see Big Brother, conceptual forces, the machine, the mechanism, society, how it works, I feel like you are brought back to little inner child Scotty who felt very isolated and wait, aren't you all seeing that this isn't fair? Aren't you all seeing that this is screwed up? Aren't you all seeing that this isn't equal or whatever? And nobody ever validated that for you. They were just like, no, what are you talking about? You're crazy. This is how things work. So I think with you in life, and that's why you got into history, and that's why you're always for the little guy, and that's why you love underdog stuff, is because from a very young age, you were not validated in your time, in your little Scotty thoughts, and you felt very unheard and unlistened to and disconnected.
You got it, 100%. You got it. I'm in tears here.
Oh, honey.
You got it. I can't even. You got it.
Honey.
I mean, I can't fake this, people. You know, you got it. I never knew that.
Scotty.
That's it. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, honey.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah.
Oh, sweetie.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
It's okay.
That makes sense.
All right.
Okay.
So there it is.
Yeah.
All right. So that's why it bothers you when you see people not, like the forces of the world feel unfair.
I'm always for the underdog.
Because I felt like just growing up, you just know, but everyone was like, what are you talking about? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're the type of kid, you saw the homeless person and like, you were like, what is happening? Why isn't anybody helping? And they were like, this is just not what you do. Moving on. That's not weird. That's just life.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, you're right. That sucks. It's awful.
Yeah.
I don't think you got that emotional validation that there's separateness
Yeah. No, you're right.
between all the classes and people and
you know,
whatnot.
because the theft, although it was bad, and it doesn't bother me. Like, I mean, you know, she did what, I mean, she should never do that. I don't think anyone should do that.
Of course.
But it doesn't trigger me. Like,
Yeah.
that didn't trigger me.
Yeah.
What triggered me was that she had to do that shift.
Yeah.
That really pissed me off.
And that is because I feel like with you see inequity and you felt that a lot as a kid and it wasn't validated. Your own viewpoint of inequities.
You just blew my mind again.
Oh, honey.
So, I can't. I really can't make this up. I wish I could. But
We've been trying to figure.
I'm not that good of an actor.
Oh,
so,
fun.
okay.
All right, let's take a break.
All right, let's do a couple ads.
Couple
and then
ads, and
we'll
let's
hear
talk
what
about
Gib's saying.
shadow work.
Perfect.
Scott's going to take a little break, but I'll take this time and talk about some Stitch Fix. Here is the deal. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of going to the store and where like not everything fits me or it's not all my style. I mean, could you imagine walking into a store that's all about you? Well, you can. It's Stitch Fix Freestyle. Your style isn't one size fits all. It's about what suits your body and what suits the moment. So why not shop at a store that is like completely personalized to your size and style? It's truly magical what they do at Stitch Fix Freestyle. Stitch Fix Freestyle is a shop built just for you. Stitch Fix Freestyle is your trusted style destination where you can discover and instantly buy curated items based on your style, likes, and lifestyle. Whether you're looking for a brand you love or to try a new one, at Stitch Fix Freestyle, you can shop a range of over 1,000 brands personalized to your size and fit, with styles for workouts to workwear, for lounging around the house, or for a night out on the town. Stitch Fix Freestyle has the clothes for any occasion. Plus, there's no subscription required, and they offer free shipping, returns, and exchanges. So get started today by filling out your style quiz at stitchfix.com/KYA. That's stitchfix.com/KYA to try Stitch Fix Freestyle. That's stitchfix.com/KYA. I wanted to mention our new sponsor, Ana Luisa. That's ANALUISA today in our podcast, because I was looking for a piece of jewelry to give to my daughter. And, you know, if I look back through my life, a lot of pieces of jewelry that I have aren't just jewelry, they're memories. They're from someone who is special to me. They're from a time in my life that is worth remembering to me. And what a better way to give a gift than a high quality piece of jewelry for someone to remember you by. And so when I was looking for a pair of earrings for my daughter, I found them at Ana Luisa, and just a pair of gold hoops, and they click in. Their craftsmanship is really thoughtful. I mean, you hear them click in. They're not going to fall out. She can wear them to sleep. She can wear them to school. She can shower in them or whatever. They will stay in. And not just that, they're timeless. They're elegant. You'll see when you go visit on Ana Luisa's page, you'll see that all their pieces kind of vibe together. So when you start someone on a collection or yourself, you'll see that you're not just giving them one piece. As you give them more and more pieces, it's something they can wear together. It's a whole look. It's a whole collection. And what a nice versatile gift to give somebody. These pieces are elegant, yet they're affordable. You can wear them every day, but they have a kind of a luxury look to them. So I love Ana Luisa, and I absolutely love visiting their website because they update it often with lots of new looks. So I absolutely recommend checking it out. You're going to want to go to shop.AnaLuisa, that's ANALUISA.com/knowyouraura. And listen to this. I love them. Their pieces start at $39, and they're currently running the biggest sale of the year. You can get 20% off if you go on to shop.AnaLuisa, that's ANALUISA.com/knowyouraura. Go check it out, get 20% off, and really get that memory for yourself or someone else. Recently, I was asked by the writer Brianne Hogan to do an article or to contribute to an article she's writing about shadow work, and that should come out soon, and I'll link it when it does. But it really got me thinking, because a lot of what I do on here, a lot of what we all work on with this podcast and what I see in my readings does have a lot to do with shadow work, or really that other side of ourselves that we don't really like to pay attention to. It's the part that we wish wasn't there. It's the part that's kind of embarrassing even to admit to. So what is shadow work? So shadow work is a term that was popularized by the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. You've probably heard that name a lot. He's quoted and probably misquoted a lot all over the internet, but he came up with the whole notion of shadow work. So basically what it is from a very young age, you were told to put parts of yourself away. Perhaps parts of yourself that, when you're little and you have a shadow side, there is no such thing. It's just you. So the little kid with the temper tantrum, for example, is told, nope, we don't do that here. Put that away. Or little things that you said so plainly growing up, this is how I feel about this person, or I'm jealous, or I'm angry, or I'm sad that I didn't get the same gift they got. You were told, no, that's unacceptable. That makes you a bad person. That makes you greedy. You saying that is wrong. That's inconsiderate. So where did all of those parts parts of you go? You used to have them as a child. You were very honest about them. There was no good or bad. It was what it was. But just the way that we're all programmed, it's true, the way that we all parent and have been parented, the way that society treats us, it's to put some things away. You're not a good person if you have these emotions. But in all honesty, it's neutrality. There is no good or bad. It's just, if you're jealous, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. If you're upset you didn't get the same as somebody else, if you're having a temper tantrum, if you feel a certain way, it's an emotion. And it got prescribed somewhere along the line. It got assigned the bad stuff. And having these emotions or thoughts or feelings made you bad. And none of this went anywhere. You just put it somewhere. And that is your shadow side. Your shadow self exists alongside what everyone else sees, even what you allow yourself to see. But often it's just not acknowledged outwardly by your conscious state. Bottom line, you don't want others to see the parts of you which aren't so sweet or societally acceptable. And over time, your ego, which is the part of you that does not like you to change or evolve or grow, your ego gets real good at hiding these things away, even from yourself. From my own interpretations, shadow work is the attention that we pay to these parts of ourselves, which we may otherwise wish to ignore. So shadow work involves willfully embarking on the journey within to uncover all the unhealed parts of us which our ego loves to hide. And it's very important to uncover these places, for within these shadows, all our wounds are actually left to fester, and healing first begins with recognizing. So when you deal with your past, how you've handled things in the past, seeing all of our own toxic and programmed and misaligned patterns, all these things are necessary to change, to heal, and to evolve. It's not fun. It doesn't feel real good, because the ego's job is to keep you the same. So it's going to step in and it's going to make you feel a few things. Okay. So remember, think about the 2-year-old you, or like if you know kids, how just kids are. I took the toy away from him. I don't want him to have my toy. Like there's no feelings at that age that you're selfish, you're not a nice person or anything. It's just, I don't want to share. That's it. Now, because you got programmed, that little feeling was told was greedy or bad or inconsiderate or rude or whatever, but you still have that feeling. There's still 2-year-old you that doesn't want somebody to take something from you. And that's okay. And so what's going to happen is when you do shadow work, you're going to revisit those parts because they're still there. And your ego is going to give you some symptoms when you start digging in. And this is why a lot of us don't like to do shadow work, because here are some feelings that pop up when you start to do it. It might even start during the podcast. So notice if they come in. It just means you're scratching the surface. So these are good symptoms. You might feel defensive. That's not me. I don't do that. No, I don't think so. What does she know? What does he know? What's this? No. You might feel upset. Like you just get upset. Maybe your tummy just feels upset. Maybe you get mad. Just angry. It's irrational. You don't know why. Maybe you're just annoyed with the whole thing. This is nonsense. I don't know what this is. You get tired. Sometimes I get really tired. Oh, I can't right now. I just can't do this. Overwhelmed feeling like you just want to take a nap now. And in a real twist of the ego, you can even feel like, well, I'm happy the way I am. This is who I am and I'm happy with it. You can romanticize how you are as a person, and you can come to love these shadow side parts of yourself and identify it as your true identity. That's a real problem. And that's that's like the toxic people. That's like the people who are kind of narcissistic-ish in their personalities. These are the people who are like, yeah, you say this to me, I'll say this to you. That's just how it goes. Like they're toxic. They own it in a way that's not healthy or nice, and they feel like that's okay to be that way. So they'll identify with their shadow side as their better side, actually, and beef it up to be almost, I don't know, like preferable. And that's a real twist of the ego. When, actually your shadow side is a part of you, and it needs to be seen and loved and heard, but not really put up on a pedestal in which you are to lead from it. Just like your non-shadow side, the parts that you've decided and deemed over time are your societally acceptable parts, those don't go on a pedestal either. Like, so it's the same thing as when you see somebody who feels, who acts like they're better than everybody else or holier than thou or super pious or all these things, and you get this little feeling in yourself like, come on, that's not who they are. It's the same thing when somebody puts their little nasty traits, their shadow side traits up on a pedestal. This is who I am. You do this to me, I'll do this to you, whatever. That's not who they are either. It's kind of just finding that balance and just being an honest person. And that's what shadow work, for my interpretation, really is. So shadow work is a really good thing to do not only with yourself, but also as part of just this conscious, mindful awakening to the ways you really feel about something. Anything in your life, you're going to have these emotions. You're going to have your emotions, and you're going to have your shadow side emotions. And it's important to explore all of it, confronting any sort of rage or jealousy or feelings of vulnerability, inadequacy, insecurity. No, those aren't fun to feel, those things. You want to hide it from yourself. You want to hide it from others. But this is all part of having a spiritual awakening, like saying things to yourself that are very honest, and then understanding the helpful things that can come from that. Because, when you just explore these patterns, you just know yourself better, and then you can have a clearer way of, maneuvering your own self through life. In therapy, this is a thing that constantly comes up. And that's why a lot of people don't, people who are in therapy a long time and whatnot are probably more comfortable talking about these sides of themselves. So, I always say, therapy's great. I've done it. It's just one of those things that they might not call it shadow work, but you do a lot of that stuff there. The real ways you feel about things that you feel forced to hide from other people. You know what I think about when I was writing this up for today? I was thinking about the back room in a store. When you go, if you go into a boutique and it's really gorgeous, it's pretty boutique, and you're shopping around, but you really have to use the restroom, and you're like, can I please use the restroom? And they're like, fine. And then, you can tell they really don't want you to, but you go back there and it looks awful. It's boxes, and it's dirty, and the bathroom's gross, and that's your shadow side. That's how I envision the shadow side. You need that back room in the boutique. It's where a lot of stuff gets done. It's where all the secrets are held. It's necessary for the boutique to run at all. It's just never gets the, nice attention that the front part of the place gets. So it's just kind of remembering, hey, there's a back room too, and that's your shadow side, and it's not always pretty, but we respect it, and it's necessary. So I was just thinking, that's what it made me think of as a little metaphor for this. Okay, so how does a shadow side show up in our lives? Well, because everyone has a shadow self, there's just countless ways it can manifest in one's life. An example I often see is where somebody hates their job. So they feel like they can't quit because it would be, that would be irresponsible, that would be lazy, that would be illogical to quit. I'll be a bad person. I'll be disrespectful of, the people that got me here. I'm going to be not wise financially. This is not a response. I won't be responsible, and all those things. Therefore, because they're not listening to their shadow side that's just over it there, and they don't want to dive into the parts of themselves that feel really not happy being there, they're going to start, I see people starting to create situations subconsciously which will produce a context where the people around them at their job are actually the ones who are irresponsible, lazy, or illogical. So you'll kind of flip the script a bit, and they'll passively participate in their own self-sabotage at the job, create a narrative of victimization, and when they finally get fired, they'll say, it was everyone else's fault, not their own. See, I'm not all these things. Everybody else is all those things. But look, you finally got what you wanted. That's an example, without realizing it, that somebody can reproduce this pattern over and over again. And honestly, it's better just to confront the fact that you don't like your work context, your career, you don't like facing your own limitations or emotions or needs or anything like that, rather than constantly project a certain narrative on others and yourself too, all just to avoid the confrontation of the shadow self. And I hope that makes sense, because I see a lot of us doing this in careers, in friend groups, in relationships, in our own health. Because we don't want to confront certain parts of our shadow sides, we will make an environmental issue that eventually we'll get to where our shadow side wants to go, but without addressing the actual driven needs that have to be looked at to get there. So it's a way to kind of sidestep a lot of healing that could have been done. And because anything that comes to you in your life, and I see this all the time with spirit, any confrontation, any situation, anything that makes you not feel happy, it's a real chance to bring in the shadow side and be like, okay, what parts is this touching on me that I don't like? You know, where am I feeling insecure? Where am I feeling inadequate? Where am I feeling vulnerable? Let me travel down with that and see what this is really about and what wounds actually need to heal. That's what any negative experience in your life can bring you on a plus side. It can bring you an opportunity to jump into your shadow side and bring out a couple lessons. I'm not saying it's fun, but I am saying that it's helpful and it does reduce this cyclical pattern for the future. So in terms of auras, when I look at the energy signature around everyone, the aura, there's always like rips or tears or imbalances in it usually, especially if you're going through something. And for me, these are just indications I see when someone is using a lot of their energy in order to suppress a shadow self. So when somebody's not doing this, their energy is more clear and abundant. And when they are doing it, it looks more strained because all this energy used, the many ways in we subconsciously alter our lives in order to avoid healing these wounds that we leave in the shadows, can distract us from the real work we are meant to do here. When I do a reading, I look at these rips and tears in the aura and I follow them down into inner traumas and pains and whatever they lead to. And honestly, they're often bound there with a lot of programming and agreements which bind them down, chain them down, and feel foundational to the people they're part of. So bringing a client down to see these traumas and see the pain and see how their shadow self is contributing to it, it's life altering. Like, because when you see something, when you're like, oh my God, I've been doing XYZ my whole life because I incorrectly believe this about myself, or I'm trying to avoid this situation, it's freeing. And when you see it, it loses all of its power over you. And honestly, the highest reward I have in my practice, or seeing all of you that are affected by any sort of podcast episode that might resonate with you or whatever, or in your interactions with one another, it's being able to witness people travel bravely into their shadow selves and just unchain themselves from their own subconscious limitations. Because again, your shadow parts aren't bad. They just feel bad because you were told they were bad from a very young age. But again, if you can bring yourself back to that picture in your head of 2-year-old you that just has a feeling, has a thought, has a whatever, before it was labeled on you, it just is what it is. And it's okay. It's not bad. It's not good. It just is what it is. And feelings are okay. I had a reading this week with a client, and it was really interesting because I saw, she's red and purple, her aura. So she's red and purple. And red and purple people tend to be, they tend to be very self-critical and honest with themselves. And she really was. She was very the type of person, like if somebody said like, hey, you communicated this to me incorrectly, or I don't feel comfortable with how you said this or that or whatever, she would be like, oh, okay. And she would really look in herself like how to fix that. So she's the type of person that would take any sort of critique and really make it constructive for herself, which is great, right? That's great. But what happened was and this is where a lot of you have to be careful, because this is like down the line shadow work. So there's people that have no idea they have a shadow self. And then there's people that have actually, they understand that they're not perfect, but then other people can come in and manipulate it. So this is what happened to this client. So what happened was she was so confused because like everybody in her life, like friends and relationships, etc., they all had horrible things to say about her like all the time. So and she would like listen and then alter her behavior and then like try to make them, okay, see, I fixed it for you. Like, are we good now? And the thing was interesting was, she was just being manipulated by people who saw that she was actually really good at going into herself and fixing it for them. And they, so I looked at, because this is the part in the reading where I'm like, can I have a picture of your parents? So I looked at her dad and I saw that dad was a huge, huge critic of her. I could tell from a very young age, this girl was constantly told how she was doing things incorrectly all the time. From probably how to tie your shoes, to how to write a paper, to how to, pay a bill, to how to, like, everything. This is how you do it. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. And the only way to get his love was to be like, okay, how do I do it? Okay, let me fix myself. How do I do it now? Okay, because the love was conditional. And if she didn't go in and fix it for him, she would feel unlovable. And this extended, as parent relations do, to all relationships around her. So another thing I see with shadow work is you have to do it for the right reasons. When you go in and see the parts of yourself that are feeling inadequate or vulnerable or whatever, you have to do it for your own self-improvement, not because somebody else is telling you to. The motivation for you to go into your shadow self cannot be your significant others or your kids. It might be something that makes you, I guess, is the catalyst for you to do it. Like, maybe I should look into that. But the motivation really has to be for you. Because a lot of you listening, just because of who listens, and I know the type of people that listen to this, a lot of you who are listening have no problem going into yourselves and fixing. It's just you have to be careful what your motivations are, because I know a lot of you get manipulated by tougher people in your lives who don't want to do that for themselves. So just a little nuance or a little, I guess, spin I wanted to put on it for you all, because the motivation has to be to fix yourself and for your own purposes of getting closer to self and spirit, not for anybody else. So we're not going into our shadow selves to please anybody. We're not going into our shadow selves to be a better anything except, and we're not going into our shadow selves to be more accepted or be more successful in other people's eyes. We're going in for us. It's your own love that brings you there. And I just want to put that out there and just remember that's your first motivation. Okay. That's my little extra thing for you guys. Okay. So what does this have to do with auras? Okay. So the way I see it, because I always end up seeing everything in aura color. So each aura has balanced and unbalanced attributes. So there's like a shadow side of every aura color. And we've been through this. We just haven't completely called it this, but I'm going to get real nuanced here. The unbalanced characteristics are indicative of that subconscious shadow self ruling your life instead of your aware consciousness taking the lead. So, for example, a purple aura person, we've talked about this a lot, when balanced is very creative and free-flowing and spontaneous and let's do it and fun, and they find learning opportunities in all their contexts, and they strive for new places to grow when they feel stagnant, and fear doesn't, even though it's there, they know not to let it hold them back, and change is welcomed instead of made sure that it doesn't, contained. So an unbalanced purple aura dealing with unhealed wounds in their shadow self will be toxic. They may focus on gossip. They may use self-destructive forces to feign change in their lives and feel generally stuck without feeling able to move freely on their own. So they'll just make drama and pretend that's change. So that's like a more shadow side ruled purple. But every one of us has a shadow side. So let's just go through all the colors. So red, for example, a balanced red is a secure leader. It's somebody who has ideas and feels like they have the power and capacity to go and roll with them, and they're in charge of their own bodies and their own lives. But when their shadow side is kind of running the show, they can be very violent or angry or loud or abrasive or verbally not so nice, ragey. They can snap. Yellows. When a yellow is balanced, they understand that their curiosity is a gift, that they enjoy, kind of running their own systems. It's okay for them to work independently. If somebody wants to help out, fine, but they have to be the ones in charge. Yellow people who are balanced love to learn. They love self-help. They love self-growth. They like to ask questions. They feel comfortable doing that. Yellows who are leading with their shadow selves are more condescending. They have a hard time accepting other people's versions of reality. than the one that they feel comfortable with controlling. They can be a little bit elite, a little above everything. They can have a bit of an air of higher intelligence. They can be cold, and they can be withholding. They can ignore people. So that's the yellow shadow side. Green's like a really balanced green. They love their visionaries. They enjoy projects. They're like, okay, let's go. Let's try this. Let's try that. They're out in nature. They are kind of like in their own world sometimes, doing things that make them feel like they're learning a new challenge. So they like to challenge themselves. But greens who are leading with their shadow side can be very withholding. They can be robotic. Their love can feel conditional. They can be very emotionally shut down, stubborn. They can love bomb people, come on real strong, and then just bye-bye, go away. They can want what they can't have. They can just distract from any sort of emotional deep diving. Indigos, and this is just something I really wanted to bring up in terms of like purples, indigos, blues, turquoises. I mean, yeah, they have shadow sides, okay? Like, just because somebody's like, if you've been listening to the podcast, sometimes like indigos seem like they're amazing. It's like, no, like I'm indigo, I got a shadow side. Okay, so they, like, nobody's free of this. So indigos, a really balanced indigo is super happy in their own company. They know their own limitations. They know when it's time to kind of do their own healing away from people. They honor their time with people. They honor their time away from people. They just understand. They take responsibility for their own boundary issues. But a toxic, more shadow-led indigo can really isolate like another person from others. They can latch on to one person, and then that person's not allowed to like know anyone else or something. They can be very jealous. They can play psychologist on the people in their lives. So by like, kind of analyze them, and they're good at it. So they can kind of reach in there, say nasty things that might not be untrue, but also weren't exactly solicited or warranted, and then like kind of step back instead of confronting real issues. Blues, a really balanced blue they feel needed and they pay it forward and they love to help others. But blues who are leading with their shadow side can be victims. They have that victim thing going on, victim blue. They can be a little bit sad all the time. They can always feel slighted. Sometimes they can have health issues and use them. But how do I say that? They can use health issues as some sort of manipulation tactic. And I hate saying that because it's something that is a real thing that people have. But kind of more shadow side blue things they can use it in a way that's manipulative. What else? Anything that you do hurts them terribly. So if you've ever had that kind of relationship with somebody where you're like, okay, I don't want to tell them how I feel because they're going to, at that exact moment, have a back spasm happen. That's kind of like a shadow side blue symptom. Like they can just really like, oh, you're going to talk to me when my back is hurting right now? Turquoises. A really balanced turquoise loves to energy heal, is like really into learning and reading, and they're very social, and they love to kind of combine just science with holistic stuff and teach people about it and whatnot. But a turquoise leading from their shadow side, they can be a bit of a copycat sometimes, take on other people's identities without acknowledging it. They can have a denial of reality, even though they know everyone's reality is their reality. They will prefer their own and believe in it the most and hold it in a higher regard. And they can be a little arrogant about it. Pinks have a shadow side. A real balanced pink is like, oh, they're fun. They kind of do their own thing. They like to make moments. They love to bring other people into their magic. They like to be playful and they're very inclusive. But a pink leading from their shadow side can be selfish. Inward, they can be kind of flaky, like flake out on things, no commitment to things, be very self-involved when they're leading from their shadow side. So what is the benefit of doing any of this and kind of naming these things that could be our issues, that could be naming things that show up in our lives that we might not want to confront all the time, but exist. When you name something, it loses its power. It's hard to see these parts of ourselves that aren't pretty, that reflect deep insecurities, traumas, and vulnerabilities. But once one gets a taste of it, they can find it easier to keep digging, keep journeying within, to do more of this work. And then they're more able to help others do the same, paying it forward to those who also crave the same knowledge. I personally used to convince myself I didn't want things. So this was a huge awakening for me with my own shadow self. So I'm sure I've told this story before, but this was kind of like a big deal for me. I would tell myself I didn't want to do the things I really did want to do. My shadow self, the parts of me that felt inadequate or not cool or pretty or intelligent or wealthy as others, really kept me down. So I would avoid places and people and situations which triggered that feeling of inadequacy. And actually, I realized it one day as I was just house hunting. I lived in an apartment. We were just like house hunting. And I felt like, I felt all of a sudden this huge light went off in my head because it was just a passing thought that I actually caught. Because your shadow self is like a running commentary. It's just almost like you turn the volume down. So for some reason, one of the thoughts escaped and hit my conscious brain. And the thought was, hey, you're not good enough to live here. And I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? Like, what the hell? Like, where's that thought? I'm not good enough to live here. And we were looking at regular houses. Like, we weren't looking at like, Newport, Rhode Island mansions or something. I was like, oh my God. And I realized like, hey, wait a second. It clicked. It all made sense. Because I was really good at lying to myself, convincing myself I didn't want things, just so I wouldn't have to confront my shadow side's feelings of like inadequacies and issues and this and that in order to get them. So that was a huge wake up call for me. And that wasn't fun because it's never fun to kind of like, I don't know. It wasn't fun for me to go into that part of myself that felt pathetic, like, ooh, because it's not like a good look. But now that I'm kind of used to understanding it, it's not to me anymore. It's actually like made me feel a lot stronger. And now because I know that that shadow part of me kind of lives there, I know it, I recognize it, I named it. So then when it pops in, I'm like, get out of here. I know you're not real. And it doesn't hold me back the way it used to. So what are some ways that you might be able to help understand your shadow self and heal it? I always talk about the 3-word journal. A lot of us just aren't comfortable with our emotional sensitivity. We're not tuned in to our thoughts. Again, we're not our thoughts. We're the observer of our thoughts. Your thoughts can change. Your observer status is the most important. So sitting down 3 times a day and writing 3 words to how you feel is really important. It's just an opener. And at first it's going to be really hard if you're not used to it, but then it'll get easier. And then you'll sit there and you'll be like, why do I feel this way? Wait a second. Why am I triggered by this email? What's this really about? And then your shadow self is there. As soon as you start asking yourself, like, why does my tummy hurt when I'm around this person? Your shadow self is there. And you'll discover it and you'll figure it out and you'll draw lines and connect the dots pretty quickly. Feelings expand, meanings connect, and little parts of your shadow self will reveal themselves to you. Because I always wonder, like, and it's hard because I'm raising kids now. It's hard because you don't want them to be mean or nasty or have temper tantrums in the grocery store. But how do you tell them that in a way different than how we were told? Because I think a lot of the reasons why we shove our shadow selves away and they can become so toxic instead of just normal feelings, like they actually take a toxic little villain twist as they get hidden for so long. They're kind of like jaded little emotions that got upset. Kind of like in the Disney movies, like, how they do the villain versions. And you're like, oh, that's why Cruella was upset. I get it. Poor Cruella. Well, Cruella could be like one of your shadow emotions that just wasn't handled well and then festered and then got real angry. And so you're not toxic. It's just a little shadow part of yourself that needs to be healed and loved. And so I wonder like how we deal with 2-year-old children and you say something like, instead of, that's not appropriate, or that's mean that you don't share or whatever, instead of labeling it like, what do we say? So I think a lot of it is just from the way you were spoken to that got that little connotation that it's like it's bad and it's evil and you can't recognize it. You have to put it away. So maybe just even contemplating that can help. Okay. So examples and signs that you're healing your shadow. So, for example, perhaps you read, this probably happens to a lot of us, an irritating email from a coworker, and immediately you get this ping in the pit of your stomach. Maybe an older version of you would have reacted immediately. Maybe you would have replied quickly, or you just would have been angry the rest of the day and taken it out on someone else without even realizing it or whatever. But after working on your shadow self, you're going to start doing this thing. It's kind of like this habit of mind where you stop for a second. You're like, ooh, that's that ping. What does that mean? Right there. When you stop and reflect about whatever that initial feeling is, that's amazing. That's where it all happens. And then there might be some internal dialogue going on with yourself. You'll understand that feeling has to do with more than just her email towards you. It deals with a feeling of insecurity. Maybe that insecurity ties into how you felt out of control and defenseless as a child. And then that need to defend yourself comes from a place when you were never believed. And then you understand that email has nothing to do with anything at all. It just, for whatever reason, triggered your shadow self. And that person who sent it, their actual intention was never linked to you or that or anything. This was something that you created out of it. And that's your shadow self crying for help. Your shadow self is always that little 2-year-old temper tantrum version of you that just needs to be looked in the eyes, like, and said, what is wrong? Use your words. Come here. That's all that little part in you needs to know. And when you get these little feelings, like when somebody says something to you or somebody cuts you off in traffic or I don't know, you get the bill in the mail or who knows what, and you get triggered, that triggered feeling isn't supposed to be like pushed away or distracted from. It's really that little 2-year-old shadow self you, like, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. And so what do? You listen to it. That's what you do. And so you'll sit there and you'll get that little sign, and when you have the mindfulness moment, that's a revelation that you have control now over how you react, and how you use that reaction is a huge sign that you're healing your shadow self. So it's very necessary to stop and think and be mindful. And honestly, you'll notice the defensive and negative feelings in your body, and you'll link them to your shadow self triggers, and you'll be able to stop for a minute, ask yourself why this text bothered you from a friend, or why somebody honking at you on the highway sets you off. And instead of reacting, you'll just stop, you'll sit in it, and the more you do this, the more you'll discover the beautiful parts of you that just need to be spoken to and loved and hugged and healed. I hope this helped. And I want to hear all about your shadow selves. We're going to make friends with them today.
All right, so I'm back. Thanks for that. I needed a little break there.
Oh.
I will say, if people are going to do this part of the spiritual journey, the shadow work, it seems like it's a tough thing to do. This does not seem like an easy walk in the park thing to do. So just keep that in mind.
It's hard. And like, that's why I was saying, like, you really need to do it with a safe place, safe person, be in a good state of mind.
Yeah.
Because, it's when you first feel it, it's like overwhelming. It can be emotional. It can make you angry. It can make you upset. It can make you feel really sad for a while. And you need to sit with that.
All right. So we did want to turn it over to the Mystic Michaela Spiritual Family on Facebook.
They always know best.
Yes, they always do, and they gave us a lot of feedback.
They're so vulnerable and amazing.
Yeah. So what'd you ask them?
I just asked them, basically, what's your biggest trigger in someone else? What do you think it says about your own self? And they just delivered.
All right. So I'll start. We'll just bounce a few of these off each other here. All right. Marissa writes, when my daughter acts timid and is always the victim during conflicts with other kids.
Okay.
She is super sensitive and easily gets her feelings hurt. She cries a lot in school. I always thought these qualities about her upset me because they remind me of my mom, who was always the victim in any situation. But maybe it's my shadow self. Sure,
yeah. And I talk about that on the Your Child's Aura episode, because basically when you have children, you give birth to little triggers. Like, what happens is, if Because they just remind, either way, either they remind you of someone you have issues with, and then you can feel how you used to feel around that person, or they remind you of parts of yourself that are unhealed, and it can remind you that you haven't yourself gained control of them. So when you're working with kids or you're a parent yourself or whatever, yeah, sure. And that's like awesome she can admit that.
Do you have a big trigger when it comes to Bree or Abby?
Yeah, like because Abby is so sensitive, and I mean I've talked about this before, and I'm sensitive. So when she asks for like real help on how to advocate for herself, I don't know. Like, we did this. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Do you have any tips for me? Like, because I just don't know. But I see she'll come home and you know what? Someone stole her $1.
Oh,
the other day.
Yeah, we did this one.
No, we didn't talk about. No,
Joseph.
Not that when she came home and she came home without her money. So if you listen to the podcast, you know that there was like this whole. We'll just ignore that for now. All you have to know is she went to school with money, came home, and she said someone stole her $1. I won't say who it is. You're like naming little kids' names, Scott.
Not last names.
Like you won't name your vendors, but you'll like call out first graders by name, given the address. Hey, this kid stole my kid's $1. She told me some kid stole her $1, and it just brought me back. Because that used to happen to me all the time.
Wow.
And she didn't know what to do, and I don't even know what to do. And I
tell you what we're going to do.
No, we just, you're like, I'm going on this podcast and naming his name. So... yeah, it's a huge trigger, and it brought me back to like when that used to happen to me, and I was like really upset. Like I started writing the teacher about $1, and then I stopped myself and was like, Megan, this is your shadow self. It's getting triggered. Take a minute. But I was about to write that. Yeah. Who does that?
And that's true. And I do want to update that episode of the podcast because I actually, believe it or not, I had so many people reach out to me.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did actually, and ask me what happened with the ice cream.
Oh, okay.
So, Abby wanted to get an ice cream for her and her friend. So actually, it's kind of a letdown. There was no ice cream that day. They ran out of ice cream.
Ice cream's $1. She didn't know if she should give it to a boy because then everybody would say that she liked the boy.
Right.
And then you gave her, I didn't know what to tell her. And then you gave her the advice, just buy 2 ice creams for yourself. Well, she went and there was no ice cream anyways to be had that day, and anyways somebody stole her $1.
Right.
So
who will not be named?
Well,
I'm coming after you, kid. All right. My red's coming back. I was blue for the last hour.
He just invited her to her birthday party, so I think they're okay.
All right.
You'll just take an extra piece of cake. Call it a day. Call it even, Steven.
I'll steal a goodie bag.
You steal an extra goodie bag, Scott. You get back at that little kid.
That's right. I'll pop that water slide. Put a pin right in it. I'm not blue anymore. I'm back to red.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
I have one. Sorry, I got all right. Christy writes, success. In some situations, other people's success triggers a feeling of enormous failure in myself. It's definitely a huge flaw. Oh, Christy, that's so good that you can see. You know what? I just want to slow clap for Christy. That's so good that she could feel that in herself, because you're not alone. Sometimes when somebody, whatever, gets pregnant, you wanted to get pregnant, or gets married and you don't even have a date for this weekend, or whatever, you're like, man, don't feel it's okay to feel triggered by someone's success or happy moments or whatever. That's okay. And it's really about something in you that maybe you don't think that you are going to get that or can get it or it's available to you or worthy of it or whatever. When it is, it's just, but that's a huge shadow self thing. I love that she admitted that.
And that's a tough one to admit.
Yeah, it's a good one to admit though, because a lot of people have that, and that is vulnerable AF to admit that. And I appreciate her admitting that.
All right. I have Karen writes, feeling unwanted in a situation. I was adopted and then felt like a burden in the family I grew up in. I never quite felt like I was wanted around by anyone. Then I married a man who also treated me the same way. I felt so unwanted and unloved. I'm going through a divorce now, and I have felt the biggest shift because I have discovered that I want me and I love myself, and I'm working on not feeling bad when others don't want me.
Oh, I love that.
So.
Yeah. We don't do what's good for us. We do what's normal for us. I always say that. That's really just the shadow self.
Yeah.
The shadow self will want you to feel comfortable living in kind of that shadowy parts of ourselves and attracting situations that make us feel that way. But that she could say, okay, and that's really where you have to go in, run in there, feel, okay, yep, I do. I feel abandoned. I feel unwanted sometimes. That's how I feel. And coming to peace and terms with that, it's going to allow her to have more control in her life over things. And she won't bend to other people just to feel wanted, because it's not necessary anymore for her. She wants herself, and she's connected to self and spirit. That's really powerful.
Okay.
I love that.
I love that one.
All right, Camille writes, I'm triggered most by the disrespect of people that can't advocate for themselves, specifically children. Also disrespect of groups that society deems lower status, and lack of empathy for said groups. Also arrogance. I can't stand when people place themselves above others, especially while thinking that they won't also find themselves in times of hardship. I have some relatively significant trauma from an abusive narcissistic parent when I was a child. I have known since a young age that I'm meant to protect children from the pain and humiliation I was subjected to. I think I might be an indigo, but I'm unconfirmed. Yeah. I picked this one because it reminded me of you a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say that one.
Yeah.
That would be a little bit of a trigger for me, too.
Sure. And here's my, I don't know. I'll just say it. Maybe the things we go through and the things we're triggered by, and the reason, maybe we needed that for some reason to be advocates for others. Like with Camille, like she's going to advocate for children because of the awful things she went through. So many others will be helped. So sometimes our triggers can be used as amazing tools once we understand what they are. And we can be like, no, I'm not, because I understand it, I'm not going to let anybody else go through it. And just like you, like because you went through something, you weren't heard and you never felt heard. Maybe you needed to hear this person, that single mom story about why she did what she did. So it's kind of like, if you think of it that way, it's not always awful. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm going to use this awful thing that happened to me to help a lot more people. And maybe that's good.
All right.
I like that, Camille. Thank you for sharing that.
All right. Here's one from Natasha. This one's interesting to me. And I'll tell you why. My biggest trigger is people that don't follow through. The quote, all words, no action, comes to mind. Interestingly enough, I used to be extremely flaky, but I've done a lot of work on myself to be reliable and dependent. So I like it because she was maybe at one point that person that was all words and no action. Then she does all this work to become not to do that, to do the opposite. So those people trigger her.
Yeah.
So it was like, I kind of, I mean, this doesn't trigger me, but.
I totally get that. Like, it's when you, I think, and that's one of the shadow work things. If somebody triggers you, you might want to ask, what do I have in common with that person? A little bit.
Right.
That's one of the ways you can kind of look at situations like that. And the other thing is, once you do the work on yourself, you have sometimes one of two things happens. You have less tolerance for people who haven't done that, and or you aren't as affected by people who haven't done the work anymore, or drawn into them, or have a need to be around them anymore. So yeah, it's kind of, when you do the work on yourself, it's harder to be around people that haven't, because you see them so clearly. And it also can remind you of parts of yourself that you don't want to revisit.
Yeah. All right, you have any more?
No, that's what I had.
All right, I got one more.
Okay.
We have to end it, of course.
Of course.
On a little giddy note, been through a lot this episode. I've had a whole thing
had
go
a
on in
whole
my
breakthrough.
head. All right, Erica writes, when I hear the word Jumanji, so triggering. I still don't understand why I start taking my clothes off when I hear it. Anyone?
Did you make this up?
I did not make this up.
That?
I can show you the screenshot.
Okay.
This is from Erica, spelled Airica.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I could do this one. Yes.
Okay.
I think what has happened now is kind of like Pavlov's dog. So, when you're listening to the podcast and you want to play with, significant other, fine, it's great.
Or by yourself.
Right, sure, whatever you need to do. And then what happens is you go out in public, right? And then you're just like having lunch, and then like someone's like, hey, did you see that movie Jumanji? Or, they say something. And then all of a sudden, it's like all of a sudden you take something off.
You take something off.
Yeah, you take a sock off, whatever.
Yeah, you gotta dress in layers these days.
Right, you gotta dress in layers. And then, like the person might look at you and like think you're a little strange. But then maybe if the word comes up like 2 or 3 more times in the conversation, and you're like down to your like underwear or something, they're gonna be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's triggering.
Yeah,
I understand it. Yeah, the shadow work can definitely help with
the shadow work can help with your Jumanji tendencies.
Yes, I think it can. So thank you for that one. I appreciate it. That ended us on a laugh, on a little bit of an emotional episode.
Thank you so much. You know, this podcast is for you and about you. I appreciate you all. Thanks for spending a little time together today.
If you want to be the most interesting person at the cocktail party, well, hop on over and listen to the Brain Candy podcast.
Our award-winning content will have you laughing while you're learning.
We read all the best articles, books, and studies and keep up with new TV shows, documentaries, and pop culture. And then we cram it all into 2 shows a week.
Conspiracy theories, cannibal rabbits, unsolved mysteries, the history of the Walkman. There's something for everyone.
The Brain Candy podcast. Find our link in the show notes.
Or simply search for the Brain Candy podcast on your podcast app.